Hey everyone, and welcome back to my completionist playthrough of the Baldur's Gate Saga with SCS. And in this episode we're going to explore more of Ust Natha. But first let me just quickly show you how I've tidied up our inventories a little bit, sorted some scrolls and potions. I've prepared, well, a few things to sell later on. We're not going to sell anything here because of the bad prices that the drow give us for everything. But this flame tongue sword, for example, that cluttered Kirinai's inventory for so long, we don't need that kind of source of fire damage anymore. We have plenty of others at our disposal now. I've also equipped Anomen with the 10% magic resistance amulet, and once we obtain some more items of that nature, like the Ring of Gax for example, we're going to be able to stack a few of them on one character, perhaps Anomen, perhaps someone else like Kirinai maybe, to have one character with a more noteworthy amount of magic resistance. I've also reconsidered when it comes to the looks of the Sentinel. Let's actually give the Baldur's Gate 2 medium shield look a chance here. At least for a while. I can always change it later. And we can also give this ring to someone else for now. And I've also noticed that we still need to steal a few select items. Like this guy still has a prismatic spray scroll that we're going to be able to learn on Senashira, and we also need a few more potions from this guy. I've missed these potions of perception that Kirinai would like to have as backup. Yeah, we can even get a few potions of genius for some future scribing sessions, and these potions of mind focusing, and also one potion of clarity that we're actually going to use very soon. Alright, so let's just quickly sort this stuff and we're going to be ready to go. And in Ust Natha there's a lot to do, but quite a few things get unlocked as we gradually progress through the main storyline here, so there's no point in visiting some areas right away. Like, for example, this big platform is kind of like a slave pens area. We have no business in there for a while longer. This whole like southeastern section of the city, there are going to be some quests and whatnot later on over there. Even the small platform to the east, we would be able to do something about a situation that's going on here. There's a genie being tortured. But the dialogue is going to make a little bit more sense once we are slightly progressed into the main storyline. And speaking of this main quest line here, it's basically a sequence of timed quests, and the time brackets that they give you are generally pretty lenient. Like sometimes it's 12 hours, sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's 3 days. So generally you have enough time to kind of go around on your own and do some side quests and some stuff that you would like to engage in. But before we set these events in motion, we are going to go around town and do some stuff still before we activate the main storyline. So eventually, of course, we are going to explore everything, but, you know, in due time, and because of how things work here in the Underdark. Anyway, here we have a couple of Githyanki guys, and of course, after all that we've been through when it comes to the Githyanki, especially seeing their attitude here, we are going to teach them a little lesson already. This is just a normal guy. We have to speak with the captain. And the captain here is going to want us to be polite. And we can ask them who they are. He is Amaz, almost like Gamaz from Rasad's quests. But yeah, basically their ship sustained some damage while they were traveling the astral seas, which is kind of a nice reference to the plane that Githyanki normally reside in. And they stopped here to make some repairs, and he actually has a couple of pretty rude responses to us here. So let's actually ask about something else when he's giving us this conversation. But yeah, sometimes he has a few more things that he can say, but anyway, we can safely dispose of them without any consequences. It's surprising that they survived in this drow city for this long. Alright, finally you go hostile there, dude. So thank you guys for your equipment, for your potions. I appreciate that a lot. And I guess we're going to start stacking these small healing potions on Jaheira again, before we sell a larger batch of them later on. But yeah, and next up we have this other slave trader. This one deals in beasts, and there's 4 of them that he has at his disposal that we could hire, I guess, from him. But there's largely no point. They would follow you around town, and eventually the charm spell would wear off on them and they would become hostile anyway. And we're just going to be able to kind of kill them as they are, even without paying for them. So he has a Gnoll, he has 2 Trolls, and a Umber Hulk. Unfortunately, the conversation with him, even if you kill all of his merchandise, destroy all of that merchandise in their cages, the conversation with him doesn't change. But yeah, we can just attack these trolls, and they work differently. Actually, they don't fall down on the ground unconsciously. You don't have to finish them off with fire or acid. These ones are exceptions, because you can hire them, I guess. And let's just automatically not attack anyone here, but be pretty precise about it. So we got like 8,000 experience for him. And here we're actually going to drink this Potion of Clarity. We actually have quite a few of them, and this is going to be useful not only here, but also slightly later. To make ourselves immune to the confusion of the Umber Hulk. I've also placed this boomerang dagger here. Let's actually have Senashira attack the Umber Hulk over there. He's totally resigned to his fate. Alright, there. And we can kill that Gnoll, although he doesn't give any experience at all. Yeah, like 35. Alright, so a little bit more experience for free. And now we're going to go to the tavern for a little bit more background on the Drow and on the different customs here in Ust Natha. We're also going to be able to spend the rest of our spells. I want to use up some of our resources before we rest. Oh, and there's a cool scene with some Mind Flayer ambassadors talking to this Drow. And like telepathically communicating. Discussing some issue. Yeah, being allowed to temporarily stay in the city. And have them watched at all times, of course. And then they all leave. Pretty cool scene. We're going to be able to witness some more later on. Anyway, let's get our bearings here, and we're not going to talk to everyone here either, because especially talking with Nim Kalaza here is going to make more sense, and we're actually going to be able to ask him more questions once we have progressed the main storyline a little bit. But here I want to do the arena fights first. So here's Zordwin, I guess. He has a fighting pit where the Drow can encounter some beasts. And yeah, apparently they've heard of us, that we're a newcomer to the city. Yeah, and basically different creatures of the Underdark that the Drow managed to capture are going to be available here. And yeah, so let's fight. There's going to be 4 fights. Here we can actually go solo with... and also this prevents confusion, yeah. So Jaheira can go as well, because first one is an Umber Hulk again. So we're protected against his shenanigans. Oh yeah, Jaheira, you can attack in melee. Alright, so that's the first fight, and for the second one, let's actually get some more people inside already. Because the next one is going to be a Nabasu, and they can primarily silence and deal some damage, but they shouldn't be too big of a deal. Of course, as always, feel free to pause and read these conversations in detail. Oh yeah, that vampiric touch hurt a little bit. But yeah, not that big of a deal. 16,000 experience for him. And now we're going to... well, unfortunately, let's just fix the combat music. It has a tendency to bug out here. Alright, by quick saving and quick loading was what I did there. And here we're actually going to be able to showcase some new stuff. Let's actually bust out our Staff of Striking and showcase a cool backstab on Kirinai. The next one, the next opponent is going to be a Sahuagin Prince, and I think we should be able to dispose of him very handily here. Just as a reminder, the Staff of Striking has charges on it for that additional big damage, and we are also going to use Kai here, finally. And I also wanted to talk about why I haven't been using Kai on our Kensai ladies so far. As you can see, it basically, for almost the next 2 rounds, it allows us to do maximum damage with our attacks. But it just worked out in our party in such a way that there generally wasn't too much point to use it, because the value of this ability, the mileage you can get out of it, depends on weapon damage to a large extent. So as for Senashira, for example, Warhammers not only have a very little damage spread, like 19 to 22, that wouldn't have made a big difference when it comes to her damage anyway, and also since she is a mage, even if she is not actively casting spells every round, it's much more beneficial to have her rounds open whenever a situation calls for a spell that we would need to throw quickly in a situation. And when it comes to Kirinai, also daggers, you know, the same type of deal, very little damage spread. Although here it's like, if she used the Fire Tooth dagger, that's basically she has 25 average damage, and she would be able to go up to 28. So in some situations, I'll try to use it when Kirinai clearly doesn't have anything to do. But she is also our person that's kind of perfectly suited to using different items with different usable abilities. So having her rounds open might be beneficial as well. But anyway, the bigger point on her is that finally, now that we have reliable stealth, that we don't have to keep her rounds open for chugging invisibility potions all that much, we're going to be able to make use of Kai for backstabs because even when the weapon's damage spread is not that big, well, with backstabbing it's still multiplied by 5, so even a difference of few damage points makes a pretty big difference when it comes to a backstab. And also, you know, the quarterstaff has a bigger damage spread, and especially once we have some scimitars on her finally with their 1d8 damage, Kai is going to be better. Of course, it's the best when you're using it with like katanas, for example, with their 1d10. And also, it depends. Of course, you're going to get more value out of it the more attacks you have. So, for example, dual wielding a katana with a speed weapon and then using Kai is going to be a decent damage increase. But anyway, let's just hide her in stealth and have Jaheira with her superior armor class being a little bait here. Alright, so Swordrin here is pretty impressed, and he has the next fight prepared for us. Alright, so Jaheira, you're going to be a tasty snack for this prince, but here actually, also when we are in stealth, we can use Kai, and then before we actually leave shadows completely, we can backstab. And then boom, 99 damage. And in one hit we have disposed of some prominent Sahuagin prince here. So that was pretty nice. And now for something different again, we're going to use some traps. And I also wanted to talk about traps a little bit, and I'm going to have to quick save and quick load again for the combat music. Because the topic of traps is going to require a little bit of an explanation. Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, when it comes to traps on the Kirinai, they actually work a little bit differently than the description says here when it comes to when you unlock the different types of traps on different types of characters. So here the description says that the traps grow more powerful with the Thief's level and can only be triggered by enemies and all that stuff. However, here the description when we want to use them, it says that traps grow more powerful with the character's level, and that is actually a distinction that matters here, because character's level is something different, of course, than a particular class on a multi-class or a dual-class character like Kirinai, and usually it's a value that's not used very often at all in the game. It's used to determine, for example, whether you're susceptible to sleep, or whether you're going to die instantly to cloud kill, or if you're going to have the saving throw allowed, or if you're going to be immune to that kind of killing effect, and whatnot. And it's also much more intuitive on multi-class characters because they generally stay pretty even when it comes to all of their classes levels, because the experience gets divided between the classes evenly, and it kind of is way more intuitive than a dual class where you have a Kensei level 9 and Thief level 22. And I'm talking about all of these because characters level on multi-classed or dual-classed characters is determined in a way where you add the levels of all of your classes and then divide that number, that sum, by the amount of classes, and then round it up if needed. So, of course, in a dual class, it's always going to be 2 classes. So, Kirinai's character level right now is, if we add the 2, it's 31 divided by 2, and rounded up, that's 16. So actually, she has just now gained access to these fire traps, because traps, for some unfathomable reason, actually work off of character's level and not thief's level. Contrary to all of the different mechanics, all of the other mechanics, and the vast majority of class-based mechanics related to different kits and whatnot. Like, for example, backstab, of course, only takes your thief level into account. Or, when you cast spells, it's your caster level, and when it comes to different kit abilities, it's always basically that class level. However, traps, for some reason, are an exception, and I don't remember if that was the case in Baldur's Gate, the classic Baldur's Gate 2, or if it's some kind of enhanced edition shenanigans. But they really should work off of thieves' levels, because thieves are the only class that can lay traps. So I'm not sure why this is created differently. So anyway, Kirinai only now has gained access to these fire traps, and that's completely okay because these ones are very, very good traps still. So it's not that big of a deal. And when she gets access to level 32 in Thief, she is going to unlock these ones. And also one thing I wanted to say about the traps is that the way I phrased it in the last episode might have given you the wrong idea that only this 20 poison damage comes with no save. But actually, none of the effects of the traps allow a save. Only this instant kill one. That's the only one that actually has a save attached to it. All of the other damage just works every time. And what's even more awesome is that the damage here is not magical, so it bypasses magic resistance. So these traps are actually very effective against illithids or the drow or any other magically resistant creatures. Also, the traps are party friendly. They are only triggered by enemies and only work on enemies. And they are also AoE, so if you place a couple of traps and then a group of enemies spawn, you can just completely destroy them. They are very, very powerful, and that's kind of the reason why I usually don't use them. Basically, that whole character level versus thief level thing just shows you how much I've used traps in the enhanced edition. Actually had to figure that whole interaction out in between recordings, because there's not much info about that out there on the internet. But yeah, it's a character's level that traps work off of, and this leads to some funny situations because Imoen, even though she is only Thief level 7, she has the level 11 poison traps actually because of her 15 mage levels. If you add the two together, that's 22 divided by in half. That gives her level 11, and she actually, if she places some traps successfully, it's those ones, the ones that keep dealing poison damage over time. So it's pretty funny that a level 7 thief can actually place those traps. But anyway, let's use, I think 3 should be enough. Our last opponent is going to be a beholder, and I think we can cut ourselves some slack and deal with this one like that. And I think even from a role-playing perspective, this is not too cheesy because we've seen by now how these opponents enter the arena, and we can of course prepare with traps. Actually, let's even, just to be sure, let's place a 4th one, and now we can talk to Zordrin again and summon that beholder, and we can be a little cheap against the beholder, seeing how cheap the beholders can be in their encounters with us. And he's going to be even hesitant to offer us this opportunity, because apparently no one was able to defeat that beholder, and that's kind of weird, taking into account the high innate magic resistance of the drow. They should be able to overwhelm a beholder without too much problems. Yeah, it was captured 4 years ago by a party of vengeful drow, and was never defeated in the pit. And only the bravest warriors have dared it and have died. There's no need to fight, female, unless you wish to. Right, open the gate. And he's like very excited about that. They call them eye tyrants. As you will see, drow have some different variations when it comes to names of the other Underdark races, and some names of their own. I think it triggers around here. Yeah. And boom! He just got completely destroyed. Yeah, 3 traps were enough, it seems. So yeah, that was it. You couldn't accomplish that. Yeah, and he's going to mention House Despana, which we don't really know about just yet, but this is kind of an exception that I just wanted to, of course, like I said, use some of our resources before we rest for some later stuff. And we can actually ask him about House Despana that he mentioned. It's led by Matron Mother Argulus. Some say it shall one day be the most powerful in Ust Natha, but Mother Loth can be fickle. It is said the Matron Mother has shown an interest in refugees from Ched Nasad, which I can only presume means you. Your battle prowess must be the reason. We can ask him about the dragon. And, yeah, the only one we know for sure of here is the fearsome silver beast that hunts the drow parties that even go near the ancient passages of our first descent. And some of them are not going to know too much about the silver dragon and only consider that rumors, and some of them, you know, of course, know a little bit more. And we actually can freak him out here by saying, perhaps you can enter the pit and I'll fight you instead, if you don't have any more beasts to offer us. And he's going to be like, well, yeah, I will go to the pens and see if there's anything more that I have available. And of course he just runs and never comes back. But anyway, now we can have some conversations with some of these drow. There's basically a custom in Ust Natha where they share their tales and stories of their achievements and whatnot, and here we're going to be able to talk to a couple of them, although Tathlin here is not going to be willing to share his tales with us. He's not going to share our foul presence. Here is Ilmrin. He's going to be willing to talk with us. Yeah, the first, of course, here we know that we can safely ask questions here. They are going to, you know, be pretty surprised at some of the things that we can ask here that every drow should know, but they're going to elaborate on that anyway. So, of course, Ust Natha means the first in drow language. Yeah, long ago, when our despised cousins of the surface betrayed our kind and banished us to the depths, it was near this very place that the drow first descended. A terrible legion, we encountered implacable foes at every turn through the Underdark. It was in this place that we first gathered together to protect ourselves. Yeah, Ust Natha means the first. Yeah, it is from Ust Natha that we invaded the cities of the Stout Folk and established the first greatest kingdom of Talantuar in wondrous Berinden. This is actually a gold dwarf city that they managed to conquer, but this whole kingdom I think was destroyed due to different magical wars between the drow themselves, and then they scattered. I think they are actually going to talk about the scattering, so let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Yeah, Ust Natha, of course, is not close to the surface, but closest. The passage that winds to the surface is very near here. It is guarded, however, by the great silver beast and close to us. Yeah, so that's normally a threat, preventing the drow from making too many raids on the surface. Yeah, and he's also going to tell us about his blooding. He's a young drow, and the blooding is a custom, kind of like a coming-of-age trip to the surface, where they are supposed to kill one of the surface races. A member of one of the surface races. Yeah, it is a blinding and foul place, that surface. My brothers and I found one of the surface elves, however, a female, pale and delightful to look upon. She was almost too easily slaughtered. We were hunted by elven patrols, and my brothers were murdered, but I carried the head of the female back to the Underdark. It was considered a fine trophy for a blooding. My matron was pleased and has sponsored my entry into the Male Fighters Society next year. Cool, dude. Good for you. And I don't think he's going to answer any questions. Yeah, whenever we want to ask questions, it's going to be Nim Kalaza, and yeah, he's actually mentioning him here. Let's have a little chat with Merinid here. He's going to have a funny story for us. My tale begins long ago, when our people first descended into the great depths and dark caverns, during a day when our homes were not carved out of stone and clay. Drow homes were made of twigs and black grasses, grass that many had brought with them into the Underdark. And that matters. They were led first by some matriarch that was powerful, potent, and cunning, a great boon to her people who admired her greatly. To honor her, a group of drow set upon the shark fiends and stole the stone throne of their king to secretly present to the matriarch as a trophy. They stowed it in the grass rafters of her hall. The matriarch arrived in her hall, and the drow warriors went to retrieve the throne, but much to their horror, its weight caused it to fall through the grass rafters and crush the matriarch below. And he's going to have a moral. Don't stow thrones in grass houses. And Tathlin is going to be so insulted by that story that he's actually going to attack. And Merinid, especially since Merinid mentions Veraun, which is another god from the Drow pantheon. Of course, a much less popular than Loth, but he's a god of treachery and of male Drow. So a lot of male Drow that kind of want to oppose that system in the Drow cities kind of turn to him, I guess, as an object of worship. And he's also all about the surface expeditions, whereas Loth actually, through all of her machinations, actually does not want to the Drow to make too much progress on the surface. But anyway, Tathlin responds here with, "You dare? I shall kill you in the name of the mother of all Drow, fool. He is mine. No one interfere." And we actually cannot interfere here. Whenever we attacked any of one of these guys, the whole city is going to be hostile. And usually Merinid dies, loses here, especially when he's so slow to react. Come on, dude. Oh, he didn't even make one attack. But he actually can win and has a dialogue option. Well, he says that the masked lord, I think, as they call Veraun, is, you know, is like more popular than they believe, and he says that he's going to be back. But anyway, he's not going to be back in our playthrough, and Tathlin is going to have to report this killing. I think there's nothing really here on the tables. Yeah, 1 gold. And here we can also talk with Barag for a little bit more backstory. Yeah, an old custom in Ust Natha, sharing details once again. Alright, so yeah, he is going to mention the scattering. Yeah, are you completely devoid of sense? Your house mother should be flayed alive for her neglect of your instruction. When the magical battles caused the collapse of Berinden, the great cavern once held by the dwarves, most drow were crushed. Only the favored survived. Groups of drow fled the rubble in every direction, seeking new holds to establish their power, set upon by our enemies. That was the scattering, fool. Ust Natha was untouched by the Great War, and hordes of drow came to our walls for protection. Devourers and eye-tyrants followed, seeking to eradicate them. Devourers are the Illithid, and eye-tyrants are the Beholders in drow. For 1 century our enemies waged constant war upon us, but the walls of Ust Natha held. And then many drow left Ust Natha to find larger living spaces, more resources to plunder, establishing your beloved Ched Nasad amongst other places. Also a very popular city of Menzoberranzan, known from the books about the Drizzt and some other heroes. Yeah, and he tells us about the running, which is another drow custom, which is kind of like an annual expedition aimed to like completely destroy or plunder some surface town, usually focusing on like smaller villages though. And he's going to explain that he stumbled upon a race or a sub-race known as halflings. And if you have Mazzy here, she's going to have an interjection. And also if you have Viconia here in the Underdark, she's going to have a few interjections giving us some hints about how we should act and whatnot. Yeah, so a pretty terrifying here, pretty ruthless story, and giving us a better idea of how the drow operate. And of course, as always, feel free to pause and read all of them in detail. Alright, so we're going to leave here for now. There's also another arena, like a dueling arena to the west, and also an upstairs area, but we're going to visit that a little bit later, after we recharge our spells for some other stuff. And yeah, I think we're not going to rest yet. Although we are going to have to, because there's an illithid encounter approaching, and of course in SCS, with their teleporting ability, you can't really just leave parts of your party somewhere further away from the illithid. They can sometimes just quickly teleport and unleash their psionic blast, stun someone, and you can basically kiss them goodbye at that point. So here is an elven mage, like a surface elf, trying to get away. And this doesn't have any relevance when it comes to game mechanics, any rewards or reputation or anything that follows, but there's a drow leader that should, yeah. He eventually goes down the same path and asks about that surface elf. And, you know, just for role-playing sense, we can either tell him the truth or lie, showing him the other way on the crossroads. And we're going to lie. Perhaps that elven woman is going to be able to find her way out of here. Alright, here we have the Female Fighters Society and Quilu's home, and also a passage to upper levels. We're not going to be able to enter Quilu. She is actually involved in a quest later on. And here, the Female Fighters Society and the Male Fighters Society, there's a few containers here that can spawn some very, very minor treasure. So I'm just going to quickly go through them. But generally those are places that are involved in some quests later on. And just to, you know, explore the layout a little bit. That's how they look like. And I'm actually going to quickly go to the upper levels, just to show another scene and a reference, another reference that Baldur's Gate 2 makes to a different D&D world. And there's going to be some slaves along the way, and actually the little scene that we're going to witness is also going to involve slaves, of course. Alright, so there's going to be a little misunderstanding here between the Duergar slaves that are going to be confused by the orders shouted by the two different drow. And of course the notoriously impatient drow priestess is going to just snap at one point. Yeah, they don't know where to go. She says one way, you another. She's like, enough of this insolence, and just kills everyone. So that's how it can be, I guess, in the drow cities. You can die in an instant, in a blink of an eye, if especially the higher ranked females feel such a whim. Here there are also some slaves, a kobold, duergar, and a surface dwarf, I guess, just being here placed as a feast for these spiders, I guess, and this one is going to try to defend themselves, but unfortunately we have to witness that, and we cannot do anything to help them, because if we attack the spiders, of course the sacred kind of beasts of the Spider Queen, Loth, everyone is going to go hostile. So unfortunately they all die, we can't really do anything for them. And here is a Spelljammer drow, and Spelljammer is another universe from D&D that they kind of make a reference to in here. And yeah, he has a couple of different lines that he can utter here. He's going to even offer us some passage in the future, but of course this doesn't lead anywhere. Yeah, so feel free, of course, as always, to pause and read some of them, and that's pretty much it. Just a reference to Spelljammer fans, I guess. And yeah, now we can go back, and we're going to start out the main storyline with the person that we have heard mentioned, Solofine, or Solaufane, however you prefer to pronounce his name.
Yes, I'm listening.
And we're going to be able to get things underway here. But this is going to be it for this episode. I thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.